Welcome back to Bible Shorts, episode 63. David is kind to Jonathan's son. Now, we're returning to the life of David as told in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel in the Old Testament, which remember is like 1,000 years before Jesus was born. And let's remind ourselves of a few things that we learned about David earlier this year. Remember that David, who was once a shepherd boy taking care of his family's flocks, killed a Philistine warrior called Goliath. He then met King Saul's son, Jonathan, and they became best friends. And David and Jonathan swore to remain friends and to be kind to each other's families forever. Then, one sad day, King Saul and Jonathan were killed in a battle against a Philistine army. Now, Jonathan had one son, and his name was Mephibosheth. He was 5 years old when the news about the defeat of Israel's army and the death of Saul and Jonathan became known. People were panicking because they didn't know what was going to happen next. Would the Philistines come south to Saul's and Jonathan's homes? So, Mephibosheth's nurse took him up and fled, and in her haste he fell, and he became crippled in both feet. We don't know, did he break both his ankles or what? But the Bible says he was crippled after this event. Mephibosheth was then carried beyond the Jordan River to the mountains of Gilead, where they found a refuge in the house of a powerful sheikh called Machir, son of Amiel, in a place called Lodebar in northern Israel. Time passes, and David eventually becomes king of all Israel, and as we know, a mighty warrior king who defeated Israel's enemies on every side. But David keeps thinking about the promise he and Jonathan had made to each other, to be kind to each other's families forever. So one day, King David asked, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul that I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now, there was a former servant of the house of Saul, whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David. And the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" And he said, "I am." And the king asked, "Is there anyone still alive from the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan alive. He is crippled in his feet because he fell when he and his nurse were fleeing after the death of my master, King Saul." David said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to King David, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lodebar." Then King David sent and brought him to Jerusalem. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, and David said, "Mephibosheth?" And he answered, "Behold, I am your servant, Lord." And David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the lands of Saul your grandfather, and you shall eat at my table always." And Mephibosheth bowed and said, "Who am I that you should show regard for me?" Then the king called Ziba, Saul's former servant, and said to him, "All that belonged to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson, and you and your sons and your servants shall work the land for him and shall bring in the produce." But Mephibosheth Your master's grandson shall always eat at my table." Then Ziba said to the king, "According to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do." So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem and ate at David's table, just like one of the king's sons. And Ziba and his sons and servants looked after Saul's lands, which now belong to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. Now, Mephibosheth eventually had a son called Micah, and Micah has numerous descendants, and they become the leading men in the tribe of Benjamin until the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem hundreds of years later. This was a good thing David did, wasn't it? To be kind to Jonathan's son. But remember, just like you and me, David is not perfect. And next week, we're going to learn about a huge mistake David makes. And then he makes it even worse. He tries to hide what he has done. And that, of course, makes it twice as bad. Will God still love David even though he's done something really terrible? And what of that promise that God had made to David that his kingdom would last forever? Look for Bible Shorts episode 64. Send me Uriah the Hittite.